You probably already have an opinion about José Mourinho. Maybe you think he's a genius, a manager who understands football better than almost anyone else.
I think I'm a special one.
Or maybe you think he's the opposite, arrogant,
Please don't call me arrogant because what I'm saying is true.
outdated, a coach whose methods belong to another era of football. But here's the strange thing about Mourinho. For more than 20 years, football has tried to move past him, and somehow he keeps coming back, winning trophies, creating chaos, turning ordinary teams into believers. And yet today, Mourinho might be more controversial than ever. Because just recently, he was back in the headlines again, this time connected to the racist abuse incident involving Vinicius Jr. And that moment made me pause. Because I almost didn't make this video. Not because Mourinho isn't fascinating, but because Mourinho forces you to confront a difficult question about football itself. Is José Mourinho misunderstood? Or does he represent something modern football is slowly trying to leave behind? The Vinicius situation created a strange dilemma, because Mourinho has always existed on the edge of football culture. He provokes, he challenges, he creates conflict, sometimes deliberately, sometimes instinctively, and that conflict has always been part of his success. Mourinho doesn't try to make football comfortable. He makes it intense, psychological, personal. For some players, that environment unlocks something extraordinary. It creates loyalty, belief, a feeling that the entire team is fighting a war together. But for others, that same environment can feel suffocating. And this tension between inspiration and confrontation sits at the center of Mourinho's entire career. To understand Mourinho, you have to understand how he entered football. For many fans, football is romantic, a game of joy, creativity, beautiful moments. But for Mourinho, football was never romantic. His father, Felix Mourinho, was a professional goalkeeper and later a coach, which meant young José grew up seeing the game from inside the dressing room. And inside the dressing room, football is ruthless. One day you're respected, the next day you're fired. Results decide everything. Watching his father lose jobs taught Mourinho something very early. Football isn't about fairness, it's about control. And if you want to survive in football, you have to control every detail you can. Before Mourinho became famous, he was a translator, working under legendary manager Bobby Robson. At first glance, it looked like a small job. Translate English into Portuguese. But Mourinho was doing something very different. He was studying everything. How elite managers think, how they communicate with players, how they analyze opponents. Robson later said something fascinating about Mourinho. He would come back with tactical reports so detailed. They looked like the work of a veteran coach, not a translator in his early 30s. Mourinho wasn't just helping Robson, he was preparing for his own future. Because even then, he believed something about football. The game isn't only won on the pitch, it's won in preparation. At Porto, everything changed. Mourinho inherited a team that wasn't expected to dominate Europe, but he created something powerful: belief. His players were organized, disciplined, mentally fearless. And then came the Champions League run of 2004. One moment defined it: Old Trafford, Porto score, and Mourinho sprints down the touchline. That celebration became iconic because it wasn't just a celebration, it was a declaration. Mourinho was telling the football world something. You might have the money, you might have the stars, but preparation, belief, and psychology can still beat you. When Mourinho arrived at Chelsea, he did something brilliant. He created a character, the special one. Many people heard arrogance, but what Mourinho was really doing was something smarter. He was controlling the narrative. If journalists needed a villain, he would become the villain. Because if the media focuses on him, his players are protected, and it worked. Chelsea became ruthless, organized, mentally relentless. Players like John Terry, Frank Lampard, and Didier Drogba didn't just respect Mourinho, they adored him. Many of them still say the same thing today. They would run through walls for him. At Porto, at Chelsea, at Inter Milan. Mourinho was once considered one of football's most advanced tactical thinkers. His defensive organization was revolutionary. His counter-attacking systems were devastating. And his Inter Milan side that eliminated Guardiola's Barcelona in 2010 remains one of the greatest tactical performances in Champions League history. But football never stops evolving. Soon, the game began to change. Pep Guardiola's positional play, Jurgen Klopp's high pressing, data-driven recruitment, possession as tactical control. Modern football increasingly became about dominating the ball. Mourinho built his philosophy around dominating moments, transitions, psychology, chaos, and suddenly a debate began to appear. Did football evolve past Mourinho? Or did football abandon something Mourinho understood better than anyone else? But Mourinho's biggest battles were never only tactical, they were psychological. Mourinho creates loyalty through pressure. He isolates players, challenges them publicly, builds an environment where trust becomes everything. In the early 2000s, this worked perfectly. Players like Drogba, Terry, and Materazzi thrived under him. They saw Mourinho as a leader in a football war. But modern dressing rooms look very different. Players today are global brands. They have more influence, more protection, more independence, which raises a difficult question. Are modern players too soft for a manager like Mourinho? Or were Mourinho's methods always too harsh? When Mourinho clashed with players like Paul Pogba or Dele Alli, many fans saw it as proof that his methods no longer worked. But others saw something different, a changing culture. Because 20 years ago, dressing rooms were harsher places. Managers shouted. Psychological pressure was normal. Today, those same methods can look very different, and judging the past through modern standards is never simple. And yet behind the arrogance, there is another side of Mourinho. The tears after Inter won the Champions League. The loyalty former players still show him. The connection he built with Roma fans. Many players say the same thing. Mourinho makes you feel special, chosen, important. And when a player feels that, they will give everything for their manager. Maybe that's Mourinho's real genius. Not tactics, not mind games, but belief. So maybe José Mourinho isn't misunderstood because people don't see who he is. Maybe he's misunderstood because he shows too many versions of himself. The tactical mastermind, the provocateur, the emotional competitor, the psychological warrior. Modern football increasingly prefers calm, analytical managers, but Mourinho belongs to a different football tradition. One where football isn't only about systems, but about emotion, conflict, loyalty, and belief. And maybe that's why he still fascinates people, because whether you love him or hate him, José Mourinho reminds us of something football once was: raw, personal, and unpredictable.